I started my first company in 1998. When I came out of college, I came into one of the most phenomenal workplaces probably in history. It was the grandest meritocracy that I think anybody had ever seen. If you wanted to become a CEO, you had some passion, you wanted to innovate around an idea, you could go raise some money and start a company. I really, really loved that workplace. Unfortunately, with the market crash of 2001, that meritocracy went away. It's really important to me to try to get back to this meritocracy in the future. To do that, I want to talk a little bit about the past. Our story in the past starts in 1898 at the end of the Industrial Revolution. This man, Frederick Winslow Taylor, is probably someone none of you have heard about. He started off working on shop floors, he was a pipe fitter, he worked his way up to becoming an engineer, and he became incredibly passionate about how to bring efficiency into the workplace. In 1893, he started what was probably the first management consultancy in history, put out a shingle and started looking for a job. In 1898, Bethlehem Steel Company hired Taylor. The problem with the Bethlehem Steel Company is they found themselves in a perilous position. They had produced 80,000 tons of steel, none of which they could sell at a profit. Well, fortunately for them, a war came along, the Spanish War, and literally overnight, they could make a profit on their steel, so they needed to get as much of the steel onto railway cars as they could as quickly as possible. They hired Taylor to help do this. Taylor innovated 3 things in business. The first thing he innovated was that workers were not responsible for poor management. Interesting thought. The second thing that he innovated was that the way to solve complex processes was to break them down into small tasks, to componentize them, to measure them, to figure out the optimal output, and then to manage against that output. And the third thing was to assign workers to very specific tasks, essentially specialization, and then measure them against their goals. In doing this, he was actually able to increase the output of the Bethlehem Steel Company by 100%, and he was in incredible demand all over the East Coast and became the most celebrated business thinker of his time. Unfortunately, Taylor was not as scientific as he claimed to be. Basically, all of his measurements were complete bunk. He cooked his books basically to prove his points, and his incredible rise was followed by a meteoric fall. In addition to that, it turns out, not surprisingly, that workers don't like to be treated like cogs in a machine. It dehumanizes them. Well, like most spectacular falls from business, Taylor did the only obvious thing. He wrote a book. In 2010, 2011, Taylor wrote Principles of Scientific Management. This book, which probably none of you have ever heard of, was the most successful business book of the first half of the 20th century. That was 100 years ago. Clearly, we've learned a lot since then. The answer is yes and no. Really what happens today is that we live in a world of expertise. We worship the expert. Everybody here is an expert in something. You pay to come to conferences that theoretically have experts talking about expert-like things. But the truth of the matter is we're still really, really bad at managing things, even if it is expertise. Many of you are probably familiar with this. It's called a Gantt chart. It's designed to help people do complex things like build dams and build software systems. It breaks things into small tasks, and then it goes and it finds the right expert for those tasks, and it figures how to get them done. Gantt was named after Henry Gantt. Not surprisingly, Henry Gantt worked for Frederick Winslow Taylor in 1898 at the Bethlehem Steel Company. We're still using the same tools that they were using to load iron onto railway carts. In addition to this, we still don't know how to pay people for expertise. We have a huge amount of disparities in our market right now around expertise. We just don't know how to discretize it and pay for it individually. Well, this is all changing. I want to go back a couple years and talk about the start of that change. In 2008, really what happened is the participation economy started. This started as an individual activity. All of you here probably blog and upload pictures to Facebook, contribute videos to YouTube, that type of thing. It started off as individuals participating and contributing into online communities. This quickly evolved into getting groups of people to participate together and designing tools for them to do that. Crowdsourcing is one mechanism of doing that, and Wikipedia is the way that they do it. Well, after a while, people said, hey, the amateurs shouldn't just be doing this. Let's get some experts into the room. This car was designed by a group of car building experts that have never met each other. The company that designed this car, Local Motors, used the same kind of philosophies as Wikipedia to organize expertise and to build something very complex. The way that they did it is they discretized the work into small pieces of expertise, found those experts, matched them to the work, and then rebuilt the whole thing into a very complex outcome. In the last couple years, over 200 companies have been funded to go and do this in every form of expertise that you can think of. If you're an architect, a graphic designer, a software engineer, you name it across the board, there are organizations of expertise online that are now soliciting your input. But the question is, how do we pay for this? Well, the way that this is working now is it's working in a marketplace phenomenon. So rather than do what Taylor did and sort of try to come up with some relatively unscientific mechanism to say an expert can load 40 tons of iron onto a railway car a day, we let the market price this. But hang on a second. I just got done telling you that other than an awesome business book, Taylor was a complete disaster as a system. Discretizing things into units, having people specialize, this isn't a good thing. Well, the reality is that we're a lot smarter now. I mean, you can use this intelligence to guide our future. The truth is we all as individuals participate in markets every single day. Being a consumer in today's society is about participating in a market. We've learned how to both group together to demand what we want from the market and also to use social regulation and watchdogging to make sure the market doesn't have abuses. The big difference between now and in the past is in Taylor's world, if you were loading iron onto a railway car at Bethlehem Steel, you had no choice but to do that at Bethlehem Steel. There was no other place to go in the market. So let's talk a little bit about the future and the way that you're going to participate in it. In 2028, I predict that everyone in here is going to spend part of their time, if not all of their time, performing their special type of expertise in a market. This is a really scary and risky thing. Why in the world do I want to get up here and try to be inspiring about this and promote this? Well, let me go all the way back to the beginning of my story. I fundamentally believe that the best way to work together as human beings is to do it in a meritocratic way. Markets are fundamentally meritocratic. So I'm going to give you the first challenge of TED. I'm going to challenge you to embrace what's coming in the future, to participate, and to look at designing the future of work as the most interesting crowdsourcing project you've ever worked on. In the end, the future is the future. I'd rather be building it with you than alone.